Welcome to SportsLit. I'm Neil Acharya.
And I am Nathan Sager.
Nate, where are we going today?
Well, Neil, you told me we were going to step outside, which is great. I've been wanting a piece of you for years.
There'll be no fisticuffs here today. No, we are going outside, that's right, with Les Stroud. And he's going to talk about his book, Wild Outside, Around the World with Survivorman, from Anik Press, illustrations by Andrew P. Barr. And this book is aimed at a children's audience. Les Stroud has been credited with creating the survival TV genre. As I understand it, he saw the reality show Survivor and thought he would show the world what that's really all about. Survivorman debuted in 2000 and aired for 18 years on OLN, Discovery, Science Channel, and elsewhere around the world. Les, the world-famous survivalist, is also a creator, artist, and author of 4 books, 2 of which, Survive, Essential Skills and Tactics to Get You Out of Anywhere Alive, and Will to Live, both published by HarperCollins. They were both Globe and Mail and New York Times bestsellers. Last March, he released Wild Outside, Around the World with Survivorman, which was supposed to be the focus of a Season 5 episode, but the third wave of COVID-19 derailed that until now. And a little update as well about this book. It was honored by the Ontario Library Association with the 2022 Yellow Cedar Award for Best Nonfiction for readers in grades 4 to 8. In the history of SportsLit, we have yet to welcome a guest like him.
Yeah, possibly we're not the most outdoorsy types of guys, Neil.
Well, yeah. I mean, I definitely can count how many camping trips I've been on one hand and possibly with one finger. Well, you know, the reason I digress, or we digressed, the reason we haven't welcomed a guest like him is because outdoor recreation doesn't necessarily fit into the structure of our wheelhouse on SportsLit. That is to say, we usually converse with individuals who've either competed solo or as part of a team in a larger league or association like the NHL or NBA. And of course, we've talked to the authors who've documented their lives. In that world, remember, the main goal is to capture a title or win a championship, not to make it out of the woods in one piece or alive. So we're going to file this episode of SportsLit under the heading of Sports and Outdoor Recreation. Brought to you by Bass Pro Fishing. A slight bit of a stretch for us into uncharted territory with a guest who makes his living out of venturing into such ground.
Indeed, and the appeal of Les Stroud, Neil, is pretty widespread. Of course, the first point of reference for me is, and it's one that we will ask about, is the episode of The Office that's actually titled Survivorman. Of course, the setup is, the background was that Steve Carell and his wife Nancy Walls loved the Survivorman show, so Steve Carell wrote an episode in which Michael Scott, the clueless regional manager at the Dunder Mifflin Paper Company, decides to go out in the woods and be Survivorman after feeling hurt and left out when he's not invited on a weekend wilderness retreat that all the other regional managers got to go to. Even Toby Flenderson, the redheaded sad sack HR rep, got to go. So Michael decides to just be like Les Stroud, and as Michael puts it, just go out into the woods and try not to die. And the results are hilarious. And it's one episode that maybe I didn't get it at the time because I didn't know the material they were referencing. But then you realize, wow, Steve Carell understood why people found the situations his character would get into funny and still rooted for him, even though he would get himself, it was entirely his fault. And they also understood why people like watching Les Stroud battle the elements. And
to put it lightly.
Yeah, and definitely looking forward to talking to Les today. Just how he's, I guess, created the taste that people, savor him by because I mean, no one knows what's going to be popular, what's going to strike a chord with people. It's kind of funny. I've seen Les mention that his favorite movie of all time is Jeremiah Johnson, which starred Robert Redford. It's a 50-year-old movie now, but Robert Redford plays, this mountain man in the American Old West. And Les has said that's the one movie that got survivalism right. And what's funny is the fellow who wrote that was a guy named John Milius. Now, people might hear that name. He directed Red Dawn back in the 80s, which was a popular movie, maybe just a few years before our time, Neil. But he also was the writer of Jeremiah Johnson. Unbeknown to me, when I found this quote from him about being a creative person, John Milius once said, "How arrogant it is to assume that you know the market, that you know what's popular today. Only Steven Spielberg knows what is popular today. He's the only one in the history of man who has ever figured that out. So write what you want to see, because if you don't, you're not going to have any true passion in it, and it's not going to be done with any true artistry." And you think of Les Stroud and the ventures he's had. I think you can fairly impose the idea that his life has been his art, and I think he's I've seen him be relatively open about maybe he'd have a much higher net worth if he was more commercial or careerist. But us, even though we're not the intended audience for the book because it's for kids, Wild Outside really did affirm how it's important to appreciate nature and feel more connected into it, and maybe that leads into thinking about how we treat it. And even prior to learning that this won an award for its appeal to children, it made me think a lot about how my 5-year-old nephew, hey there, Maddox, is figuring out the world. He's growing up here in southern Ontario, where our unofficial sport is sprawl. 300 plus acres of farmland disappear every day. But Maddox, he's a kid who's blessed with parents who love him and buy him lots of toys. But his favorite thing to do is learn animal facts. You can see him have adventures and amuse himself just playing with sticks in the backyard and making up games outside. So definitely we'll be hanging on to my copy of Wild Outside to give to him in a few years when he's only 5. So when his reading level gets there. It's a little dog here because we have been waiting a year to do this due to COVID, Neil.
Yeah, and we're going to hear from the author next on SportsLit. And we're back with Les Stroud. Nate, it's going to be a fun day for us. We've been looking forward to this one for a while.
Indeed, yeah. We're going to take it outside after I've been sitting on the couch all day working from home.
Well, Nate, I think you're first up with the first question.
Yes, Ed, welcome to SportsLit, Les. As it noted, Neil and I are venturing a bit afield with this. You know yourself best. How do you explain how your brand and the books and the TV shows have gained such a wide appeal?
Well, that's a loaded question in many ways, and one that I guess behooves me to go back into the history a little bit. If you think about it or you look back, before Survivorman, I mean the entire survival TV genre didn't exist, and you had me in a situation where I was literally in meetings with the television executives trying to convince them to take my series. I mean, I was getting quotes back, exactly verbatim, such as, "Oh, Les, no one's ever going to want to watch people surviving on television." That's from major executives at major networks, and I believe differently. And so when Survivorman took off, I had the run of it for 3 years at least before the rest of everybody sort of jumped on board, and they still can't do what Survivorman did in terms of authenticity. But the answer to your question, and I know I'm beating around a bit, but the answer to your question, initially the way I used to answer that was it felt like with the survival instruction and the connection to nature side of what I did and do and still do and teach, it's like it touches everybody in their rawest state. And people, there's the guys who on the machismo side of it wonder, I wonder if I could be like Jeremiah Johnson, and I wonder if I could be a mountain man. But even that, other than that style of person, I think it's people looking at it going, that would be fascinating. I wonder how I would do if I really had nothing and had to survive out in the wilderness. And of course, for me, I was really just trying to connect people to nature, and survival was a way to facilitate that.
So go ahead, Nate. Go ahead, Nate.
No, actually, you can go ahead, Neil.
Is it true that you wanted to show the Survivor series how it was really done?
Yeah. So the only thing that even you could say there were other shows that I enjoyed, like Bush Tucker Man out of Australia. I did not see I hadn't heard of Ray Mears until well after. I've been on here for a long time. But again, they weren't doing survival. Well, Survivor, the Mark Burnett series came along, but that was all staged and set up. And I saw that, and I thought, first of all, this is just Outward Bound with a bunch of hard bodies doing competitions, right? And I thought, no, that's not right. And at that point, you got to understand, I'd been teaching survival for at least 15 years. So for me, it was like blasphemy. It was like, what are you doing? That's so idiotic, and that's not survival. And that led me down the pathway of calling up networks saying, listen, let me show you how it's really done. And I eventually I made the right connection and the right phone call and got my show on TV to air as a pilot, and then a second pilot, and then a series. So yeah, absolutely, it was a reaction to the Mark Burnett Survivor series.
What did they say to you what did that person, that executive, and you can tell me who it was if you want, and what network? We know the network, but what did they say to you that when they did accept it? Did they say, hey, you know what, this could work, or what was it that they said to you when it did work?
It was an interesting day, actually. I'd already done 2 pilot versions for a science program in Canada called the Daily Planet. And it had done very well for them. And that's when I was pitching it as a TV series, saying, look at what I've got here. Look at these 2 calling cards I've got in my hands, Pilot 1 and Pilot 2. I can do a series, guys. I could go around the world. And I was speaking with Jill Hoffman at Discovery Canada, and she's the one who said, Les, no one is ever going to want to watch people surviving on television, right? And she was the new blood, and she just didn't want to have anything to do with me. I was the old guard, and she thought, even though I was actually very brand new to it. I literally walked down the hallway, not 60 yards away, into Anna Stambolik's office at Outdoor Life, the Outdoor Life Network in Canada, as it was called then. Mm-hmm. And Anna said to me, "You're kidding. Jill passed on this? I love what you did with these pilots. Absolutely. Let's talk series." And that, along with the Discovery Channel in the United States and Steve Burns down there saying the same thing to me, the rest is history.
And that's changed. That walk down the hall changed your life significantly. Now I'll go back, and you've always had self-belief because you've always done a lot of different things, right? From music, working at Much Music, to deciding to go out to, I think, the Halliburton area, and you basically, you've had a lot of self-belief, and you're creative in a lot of areas. So up until that point, I think you were probably doing pretty well. But what did Survivorman then do for you? Like, I'm imagining it's allowed you to live pretty well.
No, as a matter of fact, up until then, I was not doing pretty well. I mean, I really spent legitimately, this is a legitimate and candid comment coming to you. I was 45 years old when I first made more money than the poverty level living in Canada. Now you got to think about it. I got a family of 4, 2 kids at home, a wife that did not work, and I was 45 years old, still making under the poverty line. Okay, right. So when Survivorman, so I was an outdoor guide, I was an instructor, I was a blue collar guy on 75 different jobs. On and on it goes. Yes, I had that stint at Much Music, but things changed, and I got away from that. I was still trying to be a rock star back then. So when Survivorman took off, it did legitimately give me a real professional life for the first time in my life. Now, I was a professional guide, and I loved it, but you really don't make any money doing that. You just have an awesome life. And Survivorman gave me something to focus on for longer than 3 months. I mean, I don't think I ever focused on anything in my life. I never had plans that went anywhere past 3 months. And as soon as I signed Survivorman, I remember saying, this is the first time in my life I know what I'm doing for more than the next 12 months. And it changed everything. But I was 40 then. which means it was another 5 years of being that Canadian TV celebrity. I'm on Jimmy Fallon, I'm on Ellen, I'm on The View, and I'm still making under the poverty line. And that's a reality people are not aware of, that when you drive, when you're driven and you're working and trying to be an artist in whatever field, you can go a long way and be very successful, but still not be making any money.
Yeah, true say. Especially, a lot of musicians will tell you that during COVID too. You know how hard it was, especially for musicians. You had written books previously aimed at an adult audience. So why did you choose to do a children's book? And I will. We did mention this in our intro, but this book was actually released in March of 2021. But we're having you on now because of after the pandemic. But that's the question. You'd written books for adults, and then this is your first children's book. So why?
Well, first of all, so wonderfully, my adult books like Will to Live, that was up for a children's award. And Survive is heralded by every kid who's ever gone to scouting or kids camp, or wants to be out in nature, got my Survive manual. And so kids, I mean, the wonderful thing was Survivorman was a big hit with kids. I had kids sending me pictures of them dressed up as me for Halloween. So you knew then, it's like, of course this resonates with kids. Why wouldn't it? I loved watching Jacques Cousteau when I was growing up. So it totally resonated with kids, just Survivorman itself. And this was an opportunity for me to say, now I want to write a book directly to the kids, focused on the kids. And, and I had a lot to learn. Annick Press were phenomenal at working with me, and Claire Caldwell, she was brilliant. And they helped me carve my language so that I'm speaking in a great way to 7 to 14-year-olds. And now this is my chance to say, you know what? You've already loved the stuff that I did. How about I just talk directly to you, and we'll bypass the parents.
And to what extent are you, with this book and with some of the activities you're involved in now, to what extent are you trying to sort of help younger people tune into nature and the value of ecology and conservation and things like that are going to become more and more important over the next few years?
Well, to what extent? I suppose really it lies as the basis of everything I ever do. My music, my writing, my filmmaking, my speaking, my appearances, everything I do has always really got this baseline of, I really just want to connect you back to nature. I want to get you back outside. You need to get back outside. I want to get you to the parks. I want to get you in a canoe. I want to get you on snowshoes, skis. I just want people to go back out and connect with the natural world. And so everything I create as a creator does have that. If it's not directly in the background, it's always lingering. For example, in my music, a lot of my lyrics are either about nature or connecting to nature. And even if they aren't, they sort of are. If you look at somebody like John Denver, he's writing Annie's song about the love of his life, his wife Annie, and yet what he's saying, you fill up my senses like a walk in the forest, like the mountains in springtime, like a storm on the desert. He's reflecting upon nature, and I'm a big fan of his, but I do the same thing. And so to the extent that I really don't know if I could almost do it any other way, it's really been a big part of me to connect kids to nature in all that I do. And now my new series, Wild Harvest, on television. I just got told recently there was a 5-year-old boy who came in and he picked some dandelions, and he said, and his mom said, "What are you doing?" He said, "Well, Survivorman told me we can eat these." It's like, I love that,
Well, because we talked about this earlier before we started recording, I will ask you about Wild Harvest. You're in town in Toronto right now editing that, and that's your new project. So, basic question here, but tell us a little bit more about it.
So Wild Harvest was a wonderful opportunity that cropped up between myself and Chef Paul Rogalski. He's a world-class chef. His restaurant's been listed in the top 100 restaurants in the world. It's called Rouge Restaurant in Calgary, Alberta. And we met on the set of some other silly, ill-fated show as we were just doing some guesting there. And we said, we got to do this someday. Like, what if I took people out and showed them all the local foraging they could do? And I mean, not only in the forest, but in behind Walmart, in that field, that leftover field that's over there that nobody's spraying. It's not covered with pesticides. It's just there. And what's over there? Oh, look at that. There's all this wild horseradish. Okay. Now I'll show that. Let's take them into the kitchen, Paul, and you show them how to work with that in the kitchen. No matter, and so that's what the show's about. And it's not just local foraging or wild edibles. He's allowed to use sugar, salt, whatever he wants, so that it's accessible to people to say, you know what? I have been able to absolutely positively identify dandelion, and Les has shown me where to find it and how to find it correctly. And now Chef Paul has shown me how I can work with it in the kitchen. Let's do it. Let's do dandelion fritters tonight. That's kind of it right there. And it's killing it right now. It's on Cottage Life TV in Canada, PBS stations in the States, and National Geographic in Asia countries, and we're working on getting it all the way around the world. So it's called Les Stroud's Wild Harvest.
Will we see a Les Stroud's Wild Harvest with Chef Paul cookbook?
Already out. It's already there. I've got some down in my car right now. We did season 1 Wild Harvest recipe book is out. We're working on season 2 Wild Harvest recipe book. So absolutely everything you see in the show, Paul then puts it down on paper, and then I tell like a mini story about that moment of that episode. And yeah, we're putting those out for sure. And as a matter of fact, it's been nominated for a cookbook award. So there you go.
Going back to this book, which also won an award, the Yellow Cedar from the Ontario Libraries Association. You just talked about the idea. Okay, there's the no frills, and there's a field that hasn't been sprayed, so you don't have to go far to farmland to find this stuff. And this book begins with you kind of talking about urban exploring in Mimico. So do you want kids to know that, hey, listen, like, you might see me on Survivorman and I'm way out somewhere in like James Bay, but actually you can probably go to the park across your street and explore nature as well, and start there?
As a matter of fact, Neil, that's the point. That's the whole point, is to say your imagination can run wild down in the Humber Valley if you live in Toronto, Central Park if you live in New York, go out to Topanga Canyon if you live in Los Angeles. Like, they don't have to go far. They don't have to go to Peru, and they don't go to the Amazon like me, or some top of some mountain. I grew up that story I tell is, I went in behind Queensway Hospital, underneath the Huey W, in Toronto. You couldn't get a more city kind of place, but the Humber River was back there, and there were blue herons and fox and deer and, red-winged blackbirds and insects. Loved it. And that was, in young life, I would go there to explore. In older life, I would walk my dogs there. So yes, that's the point, Neil, is that while you're a kid and you don't have control of your own destiny, you can still have wilderness exploration. You can go to your friend's house who has a backyard if you live in an apartment, or the park down at the end of the street.
So you would go out on your own and do this? Anyone that excels at what they do, it's always interesting to know. For example, Sidney Crosby's dad I believe was drafted by the Canadians. So there's always that influence. Did your parents have a kind of any influence on you doing this, or you having the desire to kind of go this route? And I do know you do a lot of different things, but I'm specifically talking about the survivalist route and appreciating nature.
On a superficial level, yes. On an actual level, zero. Nothing. Zippo. My family background, and I don't mind sharing it because it's important. Because so often I will listen to different stories. Wayne Gretzky's dad is a famous situation, right? And you'll hear a friend of mine, Denise Donlin, who was at one point head of Sony Canada, I think, and I Much Music. We worked together. Married to Murray McLaughlin, wonderful singer-songwriter.
Right.
She's got a great book out called Fearless as Possible. She talks about her dad, and I hear those stories, and a tear comes to my eye. Why? Because my background is incredibly dysfunctional. I had none of that. No mentorship, no background, no guidance. The superficial level where I say yes is simply that my dad's family, everybody went fishing. So I did have the opportunity to be a kid who had a father who, yes, the odd time he would take me bass fishing, or I would go with our cousins. And then my mom had, her mom had a place up north in Bracebridge. And so we would, after she died, her mom died, we would go up there and we had a cottage. But honestly, for me, It's different. The story is that my exploration of the wilderness in Bracebridge, in behind the cottage, was actually me escaping my family. It was my place of refuge. And I know there are people out there that might be listening to this that can relate to that as well, rather than I had the greatest mom and dad and they showed me how to ski. I didn't have any of that. I had to find it myself, and I did, and really my mentors were Jacques Cousteau and Tarzan. And then later in life, when I was in my 20s, was filmmaker Bill Mason. That's where I found my mentors in film.
And now people look to you as a mentor, so you're paying it forward, as you talked about the kid with the dandelions, and I'm sure you have so many stories like that. Going back to Mimico and growing up, I mean, Mimico is known probably, especially in Toronto, but Canada is, a bastion of, hockey and lacrosse. And so I was wondering, did you grow up competing in those traditional sports, or did you say, no way, I'd rather just go and explore?
Wow, you have no idea what you're tapping into with that question. I on the exploration side of it, I really wanted to be Jacques Cousteau. I was given the information that wasn't meant. That was for rich people. You can't do that. Having a good camera is for rich people. That's what I was told. I was downplayed on that. Okay, so then we jump over to the other world, the world of sports and school and all of that. In Mimico, it's very true. If you weren't a hockey star, you were nothing. And I tried, but no, I was pathetic. I mean, I was really good for about 2 years when I was 20 to 22, because I was just a lazy bum who only played hockey. But other than those 2 years, no, I sucked at hockey. And all my friends played hockey. And when you say it was a bastion of hockey, like my buddies, I mean, I actually got to play once with Brandon Shanahan. He was a kid.
Yeah.
He was a punk at the time. So we really, the bastion of it really was only we had Brendan Shanahan and Dave Boland, right? And Stewart, he played for Toronto Marlies or something like that. Oh gosh, I'm sorry, I'm forgetting his last name. That's it, right? That was it. But those were big right. names. And then, funnily enough, Brendan Shanahan's brother, Brian Shanahan, was a lacrosse star. So I partied with Brian. I mean, a lot of partying with Brian. So I came from all of that, but I was, in my own mind, I was an outlier. But again, not to give you a sob story, but I was an outlier with nobody teaching me or showing me how to be an outlier and make a success of it. It took me a long time to make a success of myself, not having that guidance. I'm very big on mentorship and guidance now because I didn't get it. And in Mimico, like I said, yeah. I mean, I love hockey, and I played it. I played a million games for sure, but I was not on the team. Let me put it that way.
But you did get your picture on the wall at the Blue Goose eventually, right?
Well, you've done your research. Yeah, it's the funniest thing ever. I was the first guy on the Hall of Fame in the Blue Goose. They put up a Survivorman poster as the guy. He was the guy who got out, and then they added a picture, and it was Brendan.
Go ahead, Nate.
Yeah, Les, I wanted to ask, with Wild Outside, what criteria did you and the people you work with follow to decide what adventures you were going to share in the book? Because sometimes I notice it would kind of toggle between far-flung places such as Peru, and then the next chapter you're inevitably somewhere up in the vast Canadian North.
Yeah, and that was Claire Caldwell. I tip my hat to her. She was absolutely brilliant to work with, and she really honed me in, if you will, because I've got so many stories. And then she worked with me on finding a way of saying, well, let's look at categories. Oh, observation, preparation. These are categories of knowing how to be out in the wilderness. Adaptation. Okay, well, what stories do you... Okay, well, here's a story, but really I could... And it's not that when I say I could spin the story certain ways, I don't mean that in the pejorative sense that you could spin it. It was more a matter of, okay, I could look at this story and I could absolutely use it as a great illustration of how you adapt to a difficult situation. Or I could look at this story and it's a great way to speak about how you observe when you are in a situation. And that's how we came up with it. That's how we honed it in. Claire, as I said, very, very, she would say you've got to find this, and then I would just keep pitching to her until she went, that's a win, and then there came our stories.
Yeah, was there a way of sort of like visualizing that? Like I'm almost picturing like a chart or something.
Just lay it out on just lay it out on the page, going, okay, categories, observe, react, adapt. Okay, I see a thing, and then of course you don't want too many categories, right? And does it? And in the way, did those categories take you from the beginning of the adventure to the end of the adventure? And if they do, then that's how we slotted them in. It was fun.
You spoke earlier about, as we talked about the books that you've written for an adult audience, like Will to Live, which breaks down survival stories. And in that of Chris McCandless, of Into the Wild, I wanted to ask you, that story just resonates with so many people, and how much of that has to do with John Krakauer making it so compelling?
Well, the funny thing is, I felt that my take on it was a little bit anti-John Krakauer.
Okay.
I love the man. He's a brilliant writer, don't get me wrong, and I knew his book, of course. But by the same token, when you read that chapter, and especially when you get to the end, and anybody who's from Alaska or knows survival reads that chapter, like, yeah, you handled that right. They give me the thumbs up. And the reason for that is it came down to, I had a little minor bit of gentle disdain for deifying Chris McCandless, when in the end he was a very charming, very quick-witted individual, probably very, very handsome young man. And when you really read his story and look at everything he did, every time he got out of these rough situations, which apparently were leading him down his road of adventure, he got out by the skin of his teeth by somebody else helping him. And what I pointed out in that chapter, I said, in the end, Alaska doesn't give a crap how charming you are. And that was sort of my point, is don't just take charm to the wilderness, because the wilderness is neutral. But it's also, you can perish out there if you don't handle it correctly. I mean, you can perish in the middle of a city if you don't do things right. It's just that we're used to learning that very quickly. When you go out to wilderness, and Chris thought, I think, I don't necessarily believe he had a death wish. In many ways, I feel he didn't need to die. I think he was foolish, and he kind of thought charm would always win the day in the end. And as I said, Alaska doesn't care how charming you are.
Were you happy to see when they removed the bus, so others wouldn't try and follow in his footsteps?
Well, actually, that's news to me. I wasn't aware that they'd removed it. But in reacting to you, I'll say that I don't think it would have mattered. I don't think anybody's about to go in there and die just like Chris did. Most people that follow down that road, they don't have the same determination that the original legend might have had, and they quit pretty quickly. I mean, I could turn it a little more comical, a little more lighthearted, and say many people have tried to do what Survivorman does, and they come out with their tail between their legs going, oh my God, there were too many bugs.
Yeah. I'll quickly relate. I was at a baseball press box the other night, and someone asked, "What's the mosquito situation like here?" Because one of the other parks in the league is apparently notorious for mosquitoes. And then I got talking about a ball game I played when I was 15, when the mosquitoes were so bad we had garbage can fires down each baseline to drive them away from biting us. But Les, I wanted to sort of ask, you referenced it earlier, the film Jeremiah Johnson, Sidney Pollack directed it, Robert Redford starred in it. 50th anniversary of it is actually this year. But why is it your all-time favorite movie, and what did it get right about survivalism?
Well, I'll answer the first one because it's a pragmatic sort of question. The reason why it got things right was because of the consultant was Larry Dean Olson. Larry Dean Olson is one of the godfathers of modern-day bushcraft and outdoor survival skills. That's the name of his book, Outdoor Survival Skills. Larry Dean worked with Robert Redford and Sidney Pollack, and they got it correct. Just like my friend David Halliday, who consulted for me, got Castaway correct for Tom Hanks. Just like one of my best friends, Hap Wilson, got the Gray Owl story correct for Pierce Bronson. We live and breathe those skills, and so when we consult, we don't care about Hollywood. And Larry Dean Olson got those skills correctly. So when you're watching Robert Redford going after and doing his little rock and steel fire and the snow falls on it, that happened. That's real, And failure is the biggest part of the reality. And so I love seeing that. Whereas you watch other Hollywood movies, like the one with, the guy who plays Odin in Thor movies, Anthony Hopkins, in the movie he was in with the big grizzly bear. It's a bunch of nonsense. That stuff everything they did is silly in Hollywood, right? So Jeremiah Johnson got the survival correct. To answer the other side of the question is, why is it my favorite movie? Well, just watch it. I mean, it's the ultimate in the romantic thinking of, I want to go be a mountain man. And I want to escape all of this mess and just go be a mountain man. I mean, it's just got it all going on. And it's all just dreamy romanticism. But, sure, I wanted to be Jeremiah Johnson as much as I wanted to be Jacques Cousteau. And if you think about it, Nate, the reality is that what is Survivorman if it is not an amalgam of me pretending to be Jacques Cousteau meets Jeremiah Johnson?
Les, you're an authentic guy, and so I hate to use the word brand, but I want to ask you, how, business-wise, how careful are you, as a guy who kind of keeps it real, how careful are you with selling, Survivorman or Les Stroud out to the public? Like, let's say someone said, I want to have a Survivorman kerosene lamp collection, like, and sell it for $50 each, whatever. Are you very selective about that? How does that work for you from a business sense?
I'm incredibly selective and careful, and much to my detriment. I suck as a business person. I always have sucked as a business person. I am an adventurer, a teacher, a creator, an artist. That's what I am. I suck at business. In fact, I recently had someone who's been doing the business of teaching bushcraft skills and wild edibles for many years, and he was asking me about how can I, there's so many people in this market now. Oh my God, there's so many YouTube channels and everybody's showing bushcraft and everybody's teaching wild edibles. And how do I, compete with that? And I had to ask him, I said, are you asking me from business or are you asking me philosophically? Because if you're asking me philosophically, all right, let's talk. I will advise you. But if you're asking me about business, I don't know. I haven't got a clue, because I do not do anything from a business side of it. In the end, he was asking for business, so that ended that conversation. But the bottom line is, I'm also not stupid, and I love seeing my name on things. So I have a relationship with Hella Knives out of Norway, handmade knives. They're beautiful. Couldn't be more proud of them. I have a relationship with LT Wright Knives with all new forging tools and chef's knife Chef Paul Rogalski is doing for our Wild Harvest series. Couldn't be more proud. I have swag that you can get on my website, right? The t-shirts and sweatshirts and coffee cups. That's just swag. But when it comes to merchandise, I'm a pain in the butt. I once worked with Camillus Knives. They wanted to make everything cheap, go through China, all this cheap material and steel, and sure, I would have made $1 million in Walmart, but I wouldn't be proud of it. And so, yeah, I'm tough. I'm a thorn in the side that way to anybody who knows really big business, because I'm not into it. I'm into creating and getting people into nature. And if along the way I have some merchandise that does well, awesome. Another one, Hennessy hammocks, phenomenal hammocks. They still sell them, Survivorman branded hammocks. But these are piecemeal, select, high quality. And Nate, honestly, I'll probably die like that. I don't see myself, as selling out, if you will.
Right.
But I don't also hold others accountable. Hey, God bless Bear Grylls, go ahead, he's laughing all the way to the bank. But that's not my shtick.
Do you? By the way, you can shout out your website if you want to. If anyone's listening on here and wants to know how to get to it, is it Survivorman? What's
Actually,
the address?
It's just lesstroud.ca. But
Even
what I
better.
really love to shout out instead would be my YouTube channel, because that's where everything goes these days. I'm constantly uploading new content, director's commentaries. So my YouTube channel is just Survivorman Les Stroud, easy to find. And if they're a fan and they did not know that, you can see everything I've ever done there. And the ticket to that is go to the playlists and then find what you like.
One quick question before I let Nate jump in. I want to ask you, where is your, because you're this authentic guy and you're not branded for one network per se, even though people might think OLN, like, where is your popularity base? Is there one place where it's centered, like Canada, or is it in rural places all around the world, or is it among city centers? Like, where would you say your base of popularity is? Because you're massively popular around the world.
I'm sorry to say this because I'm a very proud to be a Canadian, but it's America. United States is Survivorman Gaga, which is great. Then it's Canada, and then it's everywhere else around the world.
Okay.
And speaking of a popular American TV show, there's one pop culture moment for you that you've called a career highlight. In 2007, there was that episode of The Office entitled Survivorman that Steve Carell wrote because he and his spouse Nancy Walls loved your show. How does that live on in your memory, and how often does it come up that that you actually inspired an episode of a popular TV comedy?
Well, it comes up pretty often, actually. And at the time, I actually watched. Well, they called me. They contacted me. And honestly, I was going to hopefully appear, or they were going to at least use some footage from the show. But then what happened was the writer's strike happened that very week. And so they said, listen, we're going forward with the show, but we're not allowed by union rules to change anything now. So we're going with the show that Steve wrote. Steve Carell only ever wrote 2 episodes of The Office, and that was one of them. And it's also, and then when they aired it when they were at their peak ratings. And it's the middle of the season. It's basically like their peak episode. And I got to see it for the first time when it aired on television. So honestly, the answer is surreal. I'm sitting there going, oh my God, I don't know if I want to own this phrase too much, but it feels like I think I just made it. Like it was the most awesome thing. And then the King of the Hill did the very same thing as well in cartoon. So there's been a few references out there, but that was huge. I've never met the man. One day I will hope to meet him at I don't know if it'll ever happen, but meet him somewhere at some kind of official thing, and I'll just walk up to him.
And I should mention, of course, the co-creator of The Office series, Greg Daniels, worked on King of the Hill, and I think there was a lot of writers who started on King of the Hill and went to the Office. What in terms of that episode, I have to ask, what did Michael Scott, what rookie mistakes did Michael Scott commit in that?
Oh, I mean, several. But in many ways, honestly, eating the mushrooms was obviously a critical mushrooms without knowing what they were, sacrificing his pants without really thinking it through. But otherwise, he actually touched on things that were quite real. The funniest part that he touched on that was quite real was the freedom of believing you can't be seen or heard and you're completely alone. And it's starting to say stupid things and sing at the top of his lungs, because I've done that. I have, you start talking out loud when you're out there alone. And, I thought that was, or, looking at, he's been 2 hours now without food and and he's famished, it was funny. It was, I loved that whole thing. Just tickled me pink. And that was a good era, seeing when other stuff that was going down. That was the era when all of a sudden the networks were in a word or in a sentence ripping me off. That moment was a highlight. It was like, yeah, well, you know what? The Office just parodied my show, so I'm thrilled.
Nice.
Les, I got to switch gears here. We got a couple more questions left, so thank you for giving us this much time. But it's, traditionally me and Nate, we generally, we do the 4 major North American sports and we talk to athletes. And so I'm just going to segue from that into a question that I think maybe the answer to this may be what anyone's listening to this wants to hear when knowing we have you on, or we've had you on, which is, okay, so the Avalanche won the Cup this year, and they have a Bigfoot patch on the shoulder of their jersey. Now, you've made some news lately, a lot of news now, about the pursuit of Bigfoot Sasquatch. Can you give us background on where you see this pursuit going, and for those that don't know anything about this, just how this all started?
Yeah, I think where it's going is I think it's going to fizzle out. I think it had its moment, its day in the sun. But I it's 15 minutes of fame. I think that's kind of passe now. And I have a lot of I could get into depth as to why, but I think that's where it's going. But as far as where it came from, at least, with me, why I'm very proud of the Survivorman Bigfoot series is because to this day, it is held up as kind of the golden standard of series that took the phenomenon seriously. And that's the way I always looked at it. To me, I would never describe myself as a Bigfoot researcher or a Bigfoot fanatic. I am a documentary filmmaker who found fascination with the phenomenon. And in many ways, it was more the people who are the researchers that also became very fascinating to me, those people. And that's the way I approached it. And so I did in the end 11 episodes, actually. There was an extra one. And I went through a metamorphosis myself, starting with, well, is this just a big ape that lives out there that we haven't caught yet? And landing on, oh my gosh, I'm not sure what this thing is or what it even means. But in the end, if you ask me this question at a party and you do it with that kind of tone, like, hey, dude, do you believe in Bigfoot? I'm out. I'm like, the conversation's over. I'm not going to tell. But if you ask me, skeptically, skeptically, like, could there be a bipedal, hominid species with all these different attributes for thousands of years, with legends that cross the continents and hundreds of cultures and thousands of sightings? What's the plausibility? That's a different conversation to have. For the most part, people just giggle too much about it now.
Right.
And I'll leave this by saying, if they were to instead look at it like, hey, it's a phenomenon. Why don't you check out and get interested in the phenomenon? Don't forget the fantasy part. Look at it as a phenomenon, and then you'll see it's pretty fascinating.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Nate.
And that's something that I wish people would take, more seriously, obviously, is, the climate change and stuff. How much of that do you sort of incorporate into the message you're trying to spread through what you create?
I have vacillated on that because sometimes I think about my position and my platform and responsibility. Sometimes I slip down a dark hole of fatalism and think more selfishly. And in the end, Nate, what I really do is I land on what we started with in this conversation. As a matter of fact, I realize that my best self, if you will, is really trying to get people back out into nature so that they will then be affected by nature itself. And nature itself, Mother Earth, if you will, it's the energy of it, will speak to them on their level, and then maybe they will be inclined to live right, to treat the environment with more respect. I think in the end, though, pragmatically speaking, if I had changed anything, and you asked me about business earlier, I think when money was flowing a lot more in the middle of doing Survivorman and Beyond Survival and Bigfoot, I might have been more inclined to say, how can I increase these numbers and then put that into actually purchasing big tracts of land and just simply locking the door and protecting it. That's one way. But other than that, honestly, Nate, sometimes I can be a little bit of a fatalist with it and just feel like, this is hell in a handbag time. And so that always leads me back to, what can I do? You know what? I know how to show people the magnificence of nature. Do that. Just keep doing that and get Nate and Neil out there, even if it's just fishing, so that they remember what it's like to see fresh, clean water and pine trees and smell that air. And then when they make their decisions, maybe they'll be, more informed, more in touch emotionally to the natural world. I hope that answers your question.
That's bang on.
Just to wrap it up here, kind of a two-parter. Do you feel like COVID helped us get in tune with nature? And I say that in just thinking about how many people just started going outside for walks and maybe went through their local park, like, you did in Mimico as a kid. And we saw a real spike in growing vegetables and that type of thing. So did COVID in some way, help the idea of appreciating the outdoors that will last?
I will answer that by saying yes. And the optimist in me will say, I'll take anything I can get. And this is something. And we saw a spike for example, in recreational vehicles, and RV camping, glamping, all of that. And you know what? I'm not against that. I'm all for it. You know, I don't have a problem with technology. I don't want people to go all up, back out in birch bark canoes and, you know, living off the land and all. That's silly. But I do want them out there and being influenced by it. And if that means they get now I draw the line, however, at convincing yourself that you're being nature oriented and a nature nut when all you really do is water ski. You know, when all you really do are ropes courses or adventure racing, even. And I'm an adventure racer. No, I draw the line and say, no, those are sports. Those are utilizing the natural world for a sport. There's a difference between that and connecting to nature. So again, the answer to your question, Neil, is I think yes. I think that people turn to the outdoor pursuits in many ways because they didn't know what else to do. It's local; they can make it happen. And I guess my hope is that in that somewhere, some 13-year-old kid that ended up on a hiking trail simply because his parents were bored because they couldn't go to Italy this year because of this damn pandemic, and we're going to go hiking in Algonquin Park. And that 13-year-old kid might not have done that otherwise. Is going, wow, I actually think I really like nature. So I'm like I say, I'll take what I can get.
Well, you know, you mentioned in a CBC article that I just read about your documentary on LaLoche and the Dene High School trip. He said nature, basically, if I can read the quote back, you know, it says nature can heal. It's powerful enough to heal regardless of what you do. So I thought that was a pretty important quote. And does it apply to more than just that documentary? Does it apply in general?
Yeah, I mean, when you think about something like the concept of forest bathing, Shinrin-yoku from Japan, which is basically just go out and sit beside, like I'm talking to you right now from a hotel room, okay, in Toronto. But I can look across, and from my field of view, I can see what looks to be about a quick guess count, probably 35 trees. Now, I'm in the middle of the city, but there's no reason I can't go and sit in the shade of one of those trees. And that is better than not doing it. The people in hospital rooms will heal quicker and require less painkillers if they can simply see a tree outside their window. Now that's science. That's researched, peer-reviewed science, all right? So imagine that, but now apply it to going for a walk in the wilderness. So yes, I believe that even if you're in a bad mood, even if you're grumpy, even if you are doing sports, I still think all the better you get out into nature, because what happens there is, you want to talk aromatherapy? Well, you go step into Algonquin Park. That's a combination of by the billion of chemicals that you're breathing in, that are lapping on your skin, that are going through your going through your hair. All of that's happening, whether you like it or not. That's the cool part. Is nature is healing and distressing you, whether you want it to or not, and that's pretty awesome, I think.
It is. You know what, Les? Thank you so much for giving us this much time. I know you're a busy man, so yeah. On behalf of myself and Nate, it's been a pleasure.
Oh, it's been my pleasure, guys. And again, for everybody, the book is called Wild Outside: Around the World with Survivorman, my first children's book, and it is written to your kid to show them some adventures, teach them some lessons based on the adventures, and let's not forget, I put in activities they can actually do even in your own backyard. So it's for your kids. And guys, I'm really grateful that you've had me on.
Thank you, Les.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, guys.